No, there's a few more points.
Okay.
It's just,
I didn't
it
know.
worked out with Vicky Kaya today. All right, are we ready to go?
Are we ready for online?
Yep.
Great.
All right, I'll call to order the Mendocino County Office of Education Board meeting. If you will all join me in saluting the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to 1.2, approval and adoption of the agenda. Your motion to approve.
I move that we adopt the agenda for today.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on to 1.3, this is our approval of the minutes from our meeting in September. Your motion?
I move the approval. Thank you.
Your motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 1.4 will be a public hearing, so that'll be scheduled for 10:15, so we'll get as far as we can, and then at 10:15 we'll circle back. Now, public participation. If anybody from our public would like to comment, now would be your opportunity.
Mouth is full, otherwise.
Do we have any correspondence?
I don't have any other public speakers.
All right. Moves us to our action discussion with 4.1, resolution 24.10.1, continuing funding application for the state preschool program.
Well, we would like to continue funding, and in order to do so, it's required that the board adopt this resolution. And so I won't read that resolution, I know you are all really good at reading. It is a shorter one as resolutions go, but that's what this is for, to continue to receive funding.
I'd like to move that we adopt item 4.1.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. That brings us to 4.2, California Retired Teachers Week.
We adopt this every year. It happens whether we approve this or not, but it is a nationally recognized week. The California Retired, not nationally, sorry, this is a state one. Statewide recognition of California Retired Teachers Week. I won't read this, but it is, and I know that you have, it is in recognition that retired teachers continue to contribute to our schools in very significant ways, well beyond their last day of paid work, through contributions and through volunteering their time, through mentorship, through working directly with students. And we are truly grateful for the work that our retired teachers do. Locally, after this is approved, I'll send this to the California Retired Teachers Association, which is a club, a service organization of sorts, and they have a chapter locally, and they meet in multiple places throughout the county, and periodically, I think it's quarterly or so, they meet here at MCOE. And I encourage any of you that are retired educators, you are welcome to join. The membership dues are quite affordable, and they talk about what they're doing in schools now and what they're doing to advocate for schools now. It's really pretty impressive. So we are happy to bring this resolution to you.
Just one comment, in the resolution there, it lists a lot of things that retired teachers do. And one of the things that I thought should be in there is that retired teachers serve on school boards.
Exactly.
I just thought about that
It's
too.
very common.
I never knew that.
I was just
Listen, it makes me feel good.
Sure. Sure. Well, we can certainly add that to the resolution. We could perhaps add that in the section, the third whereas all California retired teachers share a commitment to improve their communities through volunteer activities, and we could put including such as serving on local school boards.
That sounds really good.
So if we were to do that, then the motion would be to approve with that addition.
I was just going to remark, Ed Kappas is the leader of Division 55, which is the one for Mendocino County. And of course, we're all members of one chapter or another, but mine is 27 from Humboldt County. and watching their newsletters and so forth, it is yes, a source of support, and it is a source of internal camaraderie. An awful lot of attention is being paid now to new teachers and providing them with, if you will, funds for what they need in the classroom, if you will. That's always embarrassing, but they do that. And also in terms of volunteer hours, they ask us all to report the volunteer hours that we've done and collectively, and then they put them all in a big bundle and send those hours off to the state, just as a statement. But underneath all of this, and this is important, there is a constant battle between the funding source for STRS and for retired teachers and the connection and the need and the demand. And as many of you eventually will join STRS, you'll learn more about those. But this is one of the things that the retired teachers really do with a passion, is not only lobby in Sacramento, but lobby nationally. And I gotta say that it wouldn't be there without the CRTA or CalRTA now, they call it, for us in California. So I'm really glad we're recognizing it. So don't put that on the resolution.
So I move that we adopt 4.2 with the addition that Dawn mentioned.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that brings us to 4.3. This is a resolution to establish a fiduciary fund. Nicole, do you want to talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
the specifics of this
Heather
one?
would be describing this if she were here. Her son had unexpectedly had a football injury yesterday, and he's on his way to Oakland Children's Hospital today. He's fine, but they're trying to see how to fix his hand. Got injured. But this fiduciary fund is we're in the beginning stages of starting a foundation for Mendocino County students. Marin County has been doing this for a number of years, and Sonoma County last year, the year before, got on board as well. And what the intent of it has been in these other counties is that there are sometimes big donors that want to give big donations to schools, and they sometimes don't know where to land that money. We actually currently have Sonoma Clean Power would like to make a donation, and we need a place for that donation to land. There are other steps that we need to take to establish a foundation, and this is one of them that Heather's been working on, and we're working with legal counsel to make sure we get that set up correctly. The idea or the model that is being done in Marin County and Sonoma County is they've made it clear that they are not trying to compete with local school fundraisers. What they are doing is raising monies from much bigger businesses and corporations, and they have a little bit more, perhaps a more focused approach at raising money than, say, your local football booster club might. So this is something that in the other counties where they've done it, they raise a certain amount of money, and then they distribute that money to the schools based on the number of students enrolled. That's the simplest way to put it, but I don't think it even at its most complex, it's not much more than that. That's how it's been set up. Additionally, with this fiduciary fund, in the event that we were to have a disaster or something like the 2017 fires or something like that, some of our smaller school districts are not necessarily set up to immediately open up a place for people who want to donate right away. This can also serve as a place for those sorts of funds to be allocated to people who are students, perhaps who may have lost their homes. This is not a community foundation. This is specific to students. So this is the beginning steps of setting up that foundation, and one is to get the fund established.
I have a question about the disbursement. Will all disbursements come before the board before they're dispersed, or who controls the disbursement?
A board for for that fund will need to be created. So there will need to be a foundation board and a foundation director. This is, in Marin County, I believe their foundation director, after a certain number of years, it was so big that they actually created a position for that. Certainly at the beginning, it's all voluntary or volunteer. So it would not necessarily come before this board, but it would go before a board. It's required that to have oversight, and that's required because one of the other steps that will need to be taken is establishing it as a nonprofit organization.
Okay, there will be money donated to MCOE, but we won't have.
It'll be donated to the foundation.
Okay,
Is the reference to a Fund 73 the name of the account or how it's gonna be identified?
Yes.
Okay, and while I've got the floor, I would like to see long-term that this elected body be substantially involved in that distribution decision. I think it's important that we not develop a separate, independent, and ongoing funding source. While it's not public money, but we do represent the public, and this is the constituents' way of contacting the county office. And so for us to be in a position to not do that, even if it's a rubber stamp, but I do think that it ought to be, and just my opinion, that as we go forward, that this board should make, if you will, the disbursement, not necessarily the decisions or about that. I understand boards and establishing a system for that and all of that. It's just that I wouldn't ever want the public to feel like somehow this was, if you will, a behemoth that can do this or do that, or not do this or do that, and they have no one to speak to.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so that would be a provision that I would like to see before I could vote for it.
another question that came to my mind when I was reading this too is, so we're going to have an oversight committee that doesn't have anything to do with us, yet we established this. So that, it doesn't really make,
That's
so,
too much.
and how will those
Yeah.
people, will they be appointed, will they be on the ballot, will they be elected?
They won't be on the ballot.
Okay.
They would be, so when a foundation would need, we would need to create bylaws. And Heather has all the background on this, and I'm really sorry
Sure.
that she's not able to answer this. And there really is no rush on this. We're taking several steps to make sure that we're doing this correctly, and this is one of them, but there's really no rush. And if there are further questions that Heather should probably answer, we could table this until next month, because there truly is no rush on this. Because I think Larry's point is a really good one. I wanna make sure that whatever the board approves is aligned with how a foundation, with what Heather's understanding of the foundation and the legal counsel that we've received. I hear nothing that makes me think that it wouldn't be. I just would, I think maybe I would recommend that the board table it so that Heather can be part of that and we don't miss anything.
And, I mean, it sounds like a great concept, especially if we're behind the 8 ball and Sonoma County already has one.
Yeah, and we're not behind an 8 ball. We have somebody who wants to donate money, but they haven't said, listen, do this right away, or it's not that. We've said, great, we'll create a foundation. We've met with Sonoma County, the person who kind of oversaw at their county office to get it started. And he said, he assured us this is quite doable, because we don't wanna take on something that we don't have the bandwidth to do well. This is people's money, and they, after donating it, they're gonna expect to see that it goes where it's intended to go, and the process to make sure that happens is really important to establish well.
I've had some experience here. I used to serve on the scholarship committee for the high school. And then we had sort of a slush fund, and it just comes in so handy. There were times, for alternative education week, I would take kids to Yosemite for a week, but it cost them about $400. And there were kids who couldn't afford that, and I could go get some money, and they got to go to Yosemite, and then even small things like, you know, I got to where you just couldn't do our math without a graphing calculator. And there were kids who couldn't afford one, so I could go get the money to buy a kid a graphing calculator. So it's really nice to keep it kind of open-ended and flexible because you don't always know where the need is going to come up.
Mhm.
I move that we table section 4.3 until we can get more information and have a chance to
And
discuss it.
that's,
Here's a second. Alright, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that
Yeah,
accepting more money for
Yeah.
schools is a no-brainer, but the specifics are important.
Great.
And I'm sure it's being done in a great job. It'd be
Yeah.
nice to have the other.
yeah.
Do we vote to table?
I don't think we have to vote, I think we can just not do anything with it.
That's
That moves us to 4.4.
Should we wanna go back to the?
Yeah, so we'll go back to public hearing, item 1.4. This is a public hearing, which is part of the process for independent study policies that we've been in the process of changing. So I don't think, I think we've seen these policies before.
There's one policy that the board will need to approve with the revisions, and then the other items in that are just administrative regulations and exhibits that Nicole already approved of. So this is just encompasses the entire process of independent study with the county office and Nicole.
So the only thing that is required for the board to take action on is the approval of the board policy, right?
Correct.
The exhibits are submitted in the event that public or the board wanted to comment on them, or but there's only one thing to approve, and that's the policy. So districts all throughout California are updating their board policies regarding independent study because there's been some recent legislation that impacts independent study and the ability of school districts to recoup lost daily attendance. So we brought something in August to the board that the board approved. But this is also a component to make sure that we've done everything correctly is to have this public hearing on this.
We had legal revise is what happened between August and now, is that legal looked at our policy again and had to make updates based on the legislation.
If I could remark on before we adopt, there's a section, I wanna say it's number 5 on page 1. Should it be, we talk about reasons why things might not be completed, and they make a direct reference to COVID-19. Would it necessarily need to be limited to COVID-19? It was a time when that didn't exist, and long-term with policies, there may be something else.
Which document are you looking at? I'm not sure I'm looking at the same thing.
AR 6158, page 1. I see that.
6158 AR, okay. I'm looking at.
And thank you, because suddenly my notes didn't match what I was seeing on my screen either.
Is this the AR? Yeah.
Got it.
That's a good, yeah.
Item number 5.
You said which section?
And the board may want to discuss that, there may be other opinions, or it may be worded in a generic way.
I agree, we should word that in a generic way because there will be more pandemics, that's guaranteed. We shouldn't limit it to COVID-19 only.
Nothing here limits it. The language
okay.
preceding it says study may include but are not limited
Oh,
to, and then I believe that what is
Sorry.
here is
It's a direct quote from Education Code.
Perfect.
I see. And then my second remark on that is, should we, because I didn't find a reference, should we reference the involvement of extracurricular activities? That is, an independent study student may want to be on a basketball team. I know this is for our county office only, but I've seen that become an issue, and if we were clear one way or the other, and I just, it's a non-reference because I didn't find anything there, but independent study, when a student is other than in their typical classroom and in their activities, can develop an interest, and whether that's a valid one, and myself, I don't think it is, to come and be part of, not to be excluded from the campus, but if they can't attend school because of an independent study decision, then their participation, particularly in public activities and so forth, I think should be limited. That's my feeling, but I don't know whether we need to say anything about that or whether it's implied. I didn't examine the language.
I'm not sure that there's anything here that limits that. I don't know that it's all that relevant. It is of course relevant, I'm sorry. I don't know that this will come up very often in our schools, as you stated. We don't have a basketball team, for example.
Exactly,
I would recommend that if the board would like us to look and see if the language should somehow be clarified, we do need to get the policy in place.
got it.
Because until we have the updated policy in place, we can't apply, we can't recoup ADA in the event that somebody were to be absent in accordance with this.
I understand.
But we could certainly ask legal counsel's guidance on where that would incorporate, if that needs to be incorporated.
Go with there.
No, I've had some experience with, when my daughter did some independent study and she wasn't limited. She could participate in activities at the high school, so I don't think this is limiting anybody or
I don't think it is
excluding
either,
It is important that we did it,
but I don't think we asked that specific question.
you know.
Prior to COVID-19, many schools did not allow students access if they were on independent study. When COVID-19 happened, they said we could not limit students' access. And now it's kind of, there's no law against it, so that's kind of how the flow
I
has
see
gone.
what you're
I'm not sure where our districts are on allowing or disallowing. But there, during the COVID, like that year we came back, it was pretty firm that you
Good point.
cannot limit,
Yeah.
even if they're not.
It's a good point, you know.
But we can certainly ask legal counsel if this limits or requires either which way, anything regarding independent study, regarding extracurricular
And I do
activities.
realize that we're making these policies an independent study for the students within our
Right.
two schools. So it may be redundant and unnecessary, but it's something that I feel strongly about personally, as far as in the matter of I can't go to school, but I can go to the basketball team practice.
Yeah.
Or a
But-
field trip or
And
something.
perhaps bringing it up here for our limited student body and our limited scope is trivial. I just wanted to bring it up, and the rest of the board, if you wish to go straight ahead, I would have no problem with that. Not to give her a bunch more work to do about something that's pretty self-evident.
So I just did a search on the CD's page, and it does say that there's some ed code stating that a pupil in independent study has the same equal rights and privileges of students who are in a regular program. So with that, I would assume that you could not limit their access. Of course, if they are still following through with their independent study and attending class and doing all the things a student would have to do in a regular program.
Right, that would be assumed.
Get my vote.
Yeah, I thought the language was really cumbersome on all of this. It didn't give you a real good, concise description of how to structure it. I used to do independent study contracts with students and just basically did them on my own. And it looked very similar to the contract you had here. They needed a signature from the parents. And they needed a place to be. It was usually for just one class. And I did it a lot of times with kids who were just exceptionally bright. You know, I was just getting in their way. And they wanted more time for other things. And that was one little contradiction I saw in here. Somewhere in there it said that independent study was only offered for courses that were normally offered in the regular curriculum. And then in another place it said, no, it could be used for an extension for a student. You know, and to me, you know, being able to, you know, I had a student one time who knew found out I had a degree in anthropology, and she wanted to do an anthropology with me, you know. And that was far outside of anything the high school was offering. And then I know myself in college, I did an independent study course with my advisor, which was just directed reading. She gave me a list of things to read, and it was one of the best courses I ever took. You know?
I think one difference might be, I'm wondering what, because there's both long-term and short-term independent study,
Yeah,
which serve different purposes, so I wonder if that's the contradiction that you might have
it could
seen.
be.
There's also traditional and there's course-based, which is kind of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
that's outside. A lot of schools tend to stick with the traditional because it's aligning the program to their regular program.
Yeah.
Course-based is usually to offer something extra outside, but there's different rules for attendance, for the setup and all those pieces, so a lot of schools don't wanna do both.
Yeah. But again, the language just seemed pretty cumbersome.
I like that word cumbersome, but I like, it's also all encompassing.
Yeah.
So cumbersome applies to so much of the work that we do.
Well, my first suspicion was, oh, the lawyers are been involved in this.
Twice, because we did this and then went back and saw that there were some things that were lacking. And the reason, part of the reason for on this occasion, for this particular thing to be quite so encompassing and cumbersome, is that this is audited. And it's an important, and when a school recoups ADA and an auditor sees, oh, your board policy didn't actually allow for that, then you pay money back. And there are audit findings that tell an LEA such as us, hey, you need to fix this. And there are audit findings that say, hey, you need to pay some money back. And of the two, we try to avoid both, but really the ones where we have to pay money back, and ADA is one of those things. And so that's part of the reason, like, it's super broad. We've tried to cover all the bases with one big thing. And although our programs are quite small, it's super important that we have very clear, like the attachments that you see that describe like the forms that are completed to get on independent study, because, for example, in our alternative school, we may be serving an expelled student who has to drive an hour and a half to get here, and that may not work for them. And so they may be put on independent study. It's not a first choice for any student for any reason, if I'm honest. But sometimes it is the best choice when you go through all the other options. And so we want to make sure that we get this lined up so that the auditors are going to not find any findings that require us to pay money back. And to your point, I think it needs to be easier for the staff and the students and the families to follow. And I think those things are a lot shorter, you'll notice. The policy itself is quite long.
And, excuse me, we remark about the redundancy and so forth, but this is about unintended consequences. Realistically, we don't want to find ourselves and must not find ourselves in a position where we're stretched out trying to explain something that we didn't bother or take the time or the wisdom to worry about. So thank you for wearing it out. And so with that, I have no problem of going forward. Just those were just my remarks relative to that.
Are you making a motion?
I move that. Okay, we're in a public hearing, aren't we, at this
Yeah, you have
point?
to close the hearing first.
Um,
I'm not sure how.
Oh,
all right, without further comment, we'll close the public hearing. And the board would entertain a motion on 4.5, approval of board policy 6158.
Have we finished 4.4?
We have not.
We will go back, yes. I move approval of 4.5.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. We'll come back to 4.4, which is our action to approve the A through G completion improvement grant plan.
So you or the board, because many of you may not have been here, approved a plan in 2022. At that time, we knew we were receiving money but we didn't necessarily know how we were gonna spend it. But there was a deadline to approve a plan by, I think it was April 1st. So they approved a very general plan. When I came in, I noticed that we hadn't spent any of the money, and we only have this year and next year to do so, and there's $150,000 for just our 9 through 12 students at our schools. So I met with Chris Francis, we looked at the things he would like to do, reviewed the other documents, the LCAP and SIPSA, and we came up with some ways to spend the money that will allow our students to become closer to A through G approvals in their courses. There are two pots of money. There's $75,000 for what's called A through G access, which allows students better access to A through G courses. That can be things like they have access to a counselor, they have access to tutoring, access to programs that help them build and be more successful in rigorous courses. The other $75,000 is for credit recovery only. And this is for credit recovery on classes they had either failed in the past during COVID or following years of COVID, or in other courses as they've been moving along, so that they can bring those grades up to a C and they can count for A through G. So those are two pots of money and we have to kind of address them separately. And so this was our plan. We wanted to increase access to counseling at our 9 through 12 community school, as well as our program at Oak Creek. It pays for our credit recovery and independent study programs to build that access, training for staff, and how to better provide effective counseling and academic support, preparation for WASC, and additional supports that we may see needed going forward. And on the bottom, you can kind of see how the expenditures are written out. I will note that there's a very small portion left for funding summer school. We do have other plans besides $1,400, but we had to line out all the $150,000, and so we plotted that in there. But we do have other funds, so don't worry. There are other funding for that. I just wanted to note that.
Thank you.
Mention, first of all, trivial, almost comical. The third blue square starts off with a missing capital T.
Oh, it does. Thank you. I will
Two
correct that.
insert. Forgiven. But we're talking about additional FTE. That's a full-time equivalent individual that would be assigned to this, or how does that work?
So we flew a position for, I think it was 0.2 FTE to provide extra coverage for credit recovery. We don't need a full-time for our student population, but it is beyond their normal teaching load on a day. So that's 0.2 FTE for both years.
Got it, thank you.
And the credit, the tutoring, that is all as well, just 0.2. And those numbers that say 7412, 7413, those are the two pots of money that we are spending. More for internal knowledge.
And it was A to F. Can you explain why it's A to G? What is the G?
Yeah.
So A through G, that's how they identify the different plots. I will be completely honest, I don't remember which categories
It
are
was
which.
Not to worry.
It was A to G when I was in high school, so I didn't know that there was ever A to F.
Yeah, me either.
It was A to F forever and ever and ever, and then I retired and it was still A to F. Now it's A to G.
They might have collapsed it,
Yeah, it's changed, I'm sure.
I'm sure
Thank you.
they collapsed the category probably.
I thought there was some erudite, hyper-educational.
G
Added
is for
electives.
general electives, yes, that are college A through G kind of categories, but they're extra, you already met your A, B, C, D, E, F,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
didn't think about that one.
I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work on this, Dr. Nicole. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, without any further comment on that one, entertain a motion.
And with that, I will make a motion that we approve item 4.4.
I'll second.
Second over here, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We've already done 4.5, so we'll skip ahead to 4.6, take action to approve a revision of the Mendocino County Board of Education meeting schedule for 2024. I believe.
Yeah, it's a little deja vu here because we keep bringing our schedule to you to change. We thought we were so clever in combining our organizational meeting and our regular meeting in December, and we would have been, except that there was a change in 2022 that was brought to our attention. None of our districts knew about it either, so there are other some of our districts are having to do the same very thing. The change extends the amount of time between election day and the date of the organizational meeting, right? And so the soonest we could have the meeting would be December 16th, which is a Friday. December 13th, which is a Friday, but it's also where me and all the other superintendents are in a meeting all day long. And so we went with another Monday meeting, so because by this new legislation, we cannot have our organizational meeting prior on December 19th. We can't have it prior to the 13th. So that seems complicated. It is. I don't know why that changed. Did you have an explanation for that they gave you?
No, it was one of those SB 553.
And it was something of- And it was related to counting ballots.
Yes.
Yes. So if this is not the only date that changed, it's the only one that's affecting this particular meeting. The other date that changes is in relation to a June election. But there's nothing in that affects us. So this affects us and several other school districts who had planned their organizational meeting around the same date, so.
And it also affects the fact that before, you guys used to be able to go into office in November, where now they changed it to December, so everyone's more consistent.
So what this would mean for us is, upon approval of this, is that December 9th will be a regular board meeting with all of the same beautiful faces at the table. And then December 16th would be our organizational meeting. And we might have just the organization and maybe one other thing on there. And that's where we would have people take their oath of office and take the position of chair and vice chair. We are hoping to have, or we're planning to have, a reception after the December 9th meeting, because that will be the last regular meeting with all of our team here. We want to recognize Charlene and Drew in a little reception after that meeting. But that is why this change came to you, because we, in the future, we can be clever and combine them in one meeting, but it doesn't look like that's happening this year.
Okay, that was, you just answered I was questioning why don't we do it all on the 16th, but that's why.
Because
And-
it's like an election year.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we look to see if we can move our regular meeting back, but we can't because of first interim. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
First interim
Okay.
has to be approved by the 13th.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
That's why.
And thank you for all of the trouble, I guess, or detail
Yeah,
in making that happen.
And afterwards, we should talk about this.
Alright, any other comments on that one?
We need to make a motion, so I will make a motion that we approve 4.6.
Second.
Here a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. That moves us to 4.7, take action to approve board policies 5145.3 and 5145.6 and 410.
I move that we approve these. We've had most of these before, right?
Two
Not
of
all
them
of
were
them.
revisions and one was a new one from CSBA. And so these are just gonna, basically we just needed them to be current so that our alternative format plan can be legit when it comes to the.
Part of the reason why that alternative format plan is so important is because some of the work that we do in Medi-Cal law billing, they refer to the policy of the agency which that administers that, which is us, to make sure that we have the most up-to-date policy, and this is in relation, that one is in relation to
The policies?
but yeah, that one is in relation to how we communicate with somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing or may have alternative means of communication. So it's to make sure that we are cognizant of our responsibility to communicate with them in the way that they can understand what we're saying in written form.
I'll second Charlene's motion.
Your motion and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. That concludes the action and discussion portion of the meeting. We have no information discussion, which moves us to reports. Starting with 6.1, the school program student enrollment reports. It's pretty consistent this month.
Yes, we had a little bit of growth in some of our programs. And then some changes at the Orr Creek School because of movements of different placement, or they actually moved out of our county. The early start programs, we had several students age out, so they'll be moving on from early start. And there was a typo, unfortunately, in September. We currently have 22 students enrolled in the medical assistance program.
Oh, so it was 22 in September as
Okay.
well?
I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Any comments or questions on this one?
I'm glad to see the phlebotomy program's full.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that is, the quote was, we have a lot of vampires in our county. That is a very, very popular program. It fills up very quickly.
All right, we'll move to 4.2, human resources and personnel report.
So that was attached. Do you have any questions?
Just what is a behavioral technician?
Oh,
Behavior technician works in special ed, and are those the positions at Orr Creek?
Those are the positions with SELPA.
Oh, it's
They're
not
registered, they're registered behavior technicians.
So we have registered behavior technician and then we have behavior technician, which are very similar. They're with a slight change in, or a slight difference in their certification. But they work with, they are it's a fee for service program. So school districts who have a need of a behavior technician or a registered behavior technician will contract through our SELPA. You see a similar position in like regional center has registered behavior technicians as well. And so they're usually working with students who have challenges in moderating their behavior.
That used to be my job as a vice principal.
And to add on to that, my daughter did this for quite some time. I think with her degree, bachelor's degree in psychology, that's about the highest she could get without going for her master's. So you get a lot of very educated people in these positions.
So yeah, this it's definitely some hard work, and the Self-Policy Council voted this last year to add an additional position because there is never. So the way it works at the end of the school year, the superintendents give an estimate of how much behavior technician or registered behavior technician work they're going to have, and we staff accordingly, and we staffed up. And what we said is MCOE will fund that position if it's not farmed out for fee for service. It's that we know that we always have a backlog. We never have enough of that position to go around. And the superintendents also want to make sure that they budget based on what they actually estimate. And they can't, you never know where a new need's gonna pop up. So we went out on a limb a little bit and said we will find work for that person if there is none to be had, and you will not be surprised to hear that there's plenty of work for that person to do, and then some, so.
And I was being facetious, but thank you.
You'll also see that Mindy Ramos, just in the previous agenda item, that 0.2 of an FTE for independent study teacher, Mindy Ramos, she's on that, so we just filled that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments on this one? No, we'll move to 6.3, business and administrative services report. And Heather is not here today, but any comments, questions on this one?
August 7th. Just wanted to remark about the difficulty in getting insurance. Do we have the same kind of risk levels as typical homeowners are now having? Is this about fire, or what sort of insurance difficulties are there? And I'm pausing here because I did not open the document as I should have.
I think what you're referring to is that Kylie Heath, our risk manager, attended the school excess liability fund strategic planning meeting last week. Insurance in California is getting harder to obtain. We spent time discussing strategies on how excess liability may have to be restructured. We will know more in March when SELF goes to the market to try to renew policies. Insurance is always a challenge for everyone. I don't think that we are facing the same challenges that homeowners face. This is much more about claims of injury or the law has changed for schools. A couple years ago, the law changed regarding the statute of limitations for lawsuits regarding sexual misconduct in schools.
Oh.
And it went from 10 years to age 40 or something like that. And now there is no time limit. So school districts have to be prepared for, or actually insurance companies and school districts via their insurance companies are preparing for increased liability because there is an increase in claims. And these claims are often made when, and there is no living person who can attest to what did or did not happen. So it's a real challenge that schools are facing, and certainly there's a liability vulnerability there.
That is an excellent question, though. I'm just visualizing the foothills there right behind the high school in Wood Creek. And, you know, that's a really high-risk area, and I'm sure a lot of those homeowners have had to go to California Fair Plan. So schools don't have to participate.
Our insurance is very, very different, and we do walkthroughs regular, I don't know how
But they're in
regularly.
heavily treated areas, you can't.
They are, and they will tell us things like chop down a tree, and then we do. So if you guys remember 2 or 3 years ago, there was a big, beautiful tree right there, and insurance came through and said that is a hazard. It needs to be out.
Because it could fall over.
And you may have also noticed like the limbs, we've hired tree service to come in, and so the lower limbs of all of our trees have been pruned down. So it's not the same, but it's not completely different
So
either.
that's all fine and well, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But those of us that are in they're based on their, yes, it's by location, it's not by whether you've trimmed your trees. It's like, oh, you're in this location, we will not serve you any longer, you have to go into the fair plan. Doesn't matter, I could clear cut my property.
Right.
But I'm still in the high risk area, and I'm sure the schools there are in that high risk area because they're butting up against the forest.
Yeah, I don't know, I could, we
It's
could
a good question.
get some questions from our risk
So
manager.
it's nice that they're not doing that to the schools, but, I mean, they would be obliterated if a fire came through as well.
Public property, a little different.
And again, probably being facetious, what is the Great Shakeout?
The Great Shakeout is basically it's an earthquake drill that takes place on October 17th. So it's on 10/17 at 10:17 a.m. where schools are not just schools, but agencies are encouraged to do a drill all at the same time to kind of review their processes and see where they might need to make some improvements.
Thank you.
Often in some of the schools and elementaries, they'll do a lot of other activities with it, like, earthquake table and other pieces, and use it as an education.
No other comments or questions on that one. We'll move to 6.4, Education Service Report. And this time we have wonderful Dr. Nicole Bell with us.
Thank you. There's a couple things I want to highlight. The first is I wanted to let you know that we received a letter this morning for Jennifer McCauley. She has been accepted into a program that is called the Heart-Centered Connections Training Program. It's through Riverside Office of Education. And I think the only thing we have to provide is a flight, but otherwise it's fully funded, a little grant. And she's going to learn about the optimal conditions for learning by connecting with the youth on a brain, nervous system, and cultural level. So she's very excited because it connects nicely to our CYBHI work, and she will be leaving in November for a few days to do the intensive training, and then she'll have follow-ups from there. So I wanted to congratulate her, she's very excited. The next piece I wanted to let you know is that we received a grant from 21st CSLA and in the amount of $57,000 and $57,475, and to pilot a new teachers community of practice that we're going to be centering in Willits. They have over 30 teachers that are on intern credentials or are in their first year of teaching, and so they asked for some support, so we developed a pilot program with community of practice and some follow-up coaching from our coaches, and it's been fully funded through 21st CSLA. So we are very excited about that as well. Let's see, and there's a couple other things I wanted to highlight. Our homeless and foster youth, they are receiving up to $49,999 from the Juvenile Justice Department as a grant to help fund our snack pack program. And we're currently already serving 214 students a week, and they continue to add every week.
I have a question about that. Some time ago, when I was involved in Kiwanis, we worked a program where homeless students were provided a packet of food for the weekend.
Yeah.
Now, is this an extension of that?
Well, we do that, we still do that, and it is funded through various
Yeah,
agencies, the
so
snack
that-
pack program.
That still exists.
It is,
It
UPS delivers them
Yes.
every
For free.
Friday.
Well, that
for
was
free.
marvelous.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad that's still going too.
Mhm.
Thanks.
And our need is growing every year.
And is that year round or just during the school year?
It's just during the school year, right?
Yes, I believe so. Let's see, there was another thing I wanted to highlight. Friday, November 8th is our graduation ceremony for the adult ed program for the Mendocino College Theater. It starts at 6 p.m. and we wanted to make sure that you had the time for that. And you're more than welcome to join us to celebrate our adult education students.
What time was it? 'Cause I'm
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
We'll send a follow-up email so that we can, so you
Okay.
can each respond and we can know how many of you are gonna be there and if we should set up room on the stage or, you know, what the setup is. So I'll send out another email and
Thank
on
you.
that, yeah.
That one's a very fun graduation.
Yeah.
I was there
It
last
was.
year, yeah, lots of families in the audience, very
Yeah.
lively.
I used to do the shake and take with everybody, and then when COVID hit, I thought, I don't wanna shake everybody's hand.
There's many other wonderful things in there, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Discussing the possibility or researching the possibility of offering a CNA program in adult ed.
Yes.
What is that?
So CNA is the Certified Nursing Assistant.
Oh, wow.
And we are currently in talks. There is an organization that is fully funding programs for the next year and a half where students would not have to pay any tuition at all. And the
Wow.
grant would pay for all of our setup costs, et cetera. So we're looking at getting that started. We're in talks. We're also talking with Mendocino College to make sure that we're not trying to duplicate any efforts there. And we're hoping to maybe be able to offer that next spring.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you very much. All right, any other comments, questions on this one? Hearing none, I'll move on to 5.8, our superintendent's report from Nicole Lindsay.
Yes, so I have a couple things that I wanted to share with you. Housing, employee housing has continued to be a topic of conversation here and throughout the state, throughout the nation really. It's taking up, a lot of energy, and it feels like we should either do something or stop talking about it. So what we are doing at MCOE, I wanted to fill you in on some things. There are no eminent plans, but we wanted to start exploring partnerships. Our superintendents have a lot on their plate. Becoming landlords or land developers is quite a lot to take on. And so we've been exploring what MCOE might be able to do.
Good.
CSBA has published a report, I know some of you, I think, got it, in fact, I think Larry forwarded me the information at some point. But they did a review, a map, an interactive map, where you can look at land that CSBA through this study that they did that they thought can be developed potentially be developed for housing. I think they, in our county, have very much overestimated the land that could be developed. For example, they put down as land that we own, juvenile hall.
Oh,
And part of the high school, part of Ukiah High School. We once had a program there, but that's not our land. So I think that they did a lot of good work, and there's probably some great things that will come from that. One thing that we saw through that interactive map is a little piece of land in Point Arena School District. It's inland. So it got us looking at, well, what paperwork do we have? We may or may not own that land, I don't know. It's very small, and from Google Maps, it looks to be mostly trees. But Ryan Bartow, our new Director of Maintenance and Operations, is kind of doing a paper search, and then we'll work with the county to figure out, is there land that we own that we don't know about? The record keeping, it has changed over time. And so we want to make sure that we know what we own, because if there's something there that for housing development or for anything, we should know about it. So that's a wonderful thing to realize there may be something out there that we own, and if we don't own it, we should figure out why somebody thinks that we do and get the paperwork updated.
So by we, you just mean the county?
The
or-
county, Mendocino County Office of
Oh,
Education.
I would think it would be good to do that with every district in the county.
yeah,
So the districts, some of them have very recently because of their land trades and things like that. We're right now, we're only looking at ours because that's all we have paperwork on.
Yeah.
Another thing that we have done is Fort Bragg Unified is interested in, or is contemplating doing transitional housing on their land, taking a portion of their land that is not highly used and putting tiny homes on it for transitional housing. So Eric Crawford, our Director of Career and College, and I have met with Christy Smith, who's the Dean of Career Education at Mendocino College, and with Noel Woodhouse, who's the Sustainable Construction Program Instructor for Mendocino College, to see if can we do something locally with a tiny home? We have a program, the Construction Corps, the MCOE provides oversight to, and Eric Crawford has been working with for years. Is there some sort of partnership there? So far, nothing has developed, but some ideas are floating around there. I hope something beautiful comes with that, but right now it's just, we're talking about the idea to see if there's anything that might develop there, because there's funding through Career and College, both through the college and to us, that it seems like if we're going to do something like a tiny home, or if there's a need for a tiny home in our county, that perhaps we can contribute. And they're not looking for a tiny home. They would potentially be looking for a few. And again, that is no decision has been made. I don't want to start any rumor that Fort Bragg is building tiny homes. They're contemplating what they can do for transitional homes for their school district. Another thing that we have done is Heather and I have met with Heather and I and Ryan have met with the Chief Executive Officer of the Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation, Ryan LaRue, to see if in his work if there's any potential partnership. And we're gonna be meeting, we've met twice, we're gonna meet in another month. It just feels like there's something here that is something that they're developing, perhaps MCOE could be part of it in some way. Given the numbers, given our population, for us to build an apartment complex like Sonoma County Office of Education is doing, or condos, that's probably only gonna meet the needs of 1 or 2 districts, and I kind of doubt we'd fill an entire complex. So that's where the conversation regarding housing is so specific to the needs of your community and your county. And that's another reason why I think a partnership would be, if anything is to come of this, that seems like a good route. So that we are not trying to become experts in land development, but rather working with somebody who is. So we have met with him, and again, we'll have a follow-up meeting, because right now it's just like, what if we did this? You remember when you were in middle school and you're like, what if, and all these wild and crazy ideas come up. that's what these meetings are. I feel like something will either come up or we can check it off the list and say that that's going nowhere. The other thing that Heather and I have done is we've met with Darcy Antle, the CFO for the County of Mendocino, as well as the Planning and Buildings Assistant Director John Burks and the Planning and Buildings Senior Planner Ross Ford, just to let them know we're interested in a partnership if there's anything out there. They would be the people that we think would know about things that are developing. So we wanted to kind of let them know what our thoughts are, let them know what we're looking at so far, and just it feels it would feel I would hate for them to be surprised by a partnership. But more than that, I think that they might be able to help broker a partnership or at least make an introduction. So again, we're just exploring different things, and if we get to a point where it's not gonna go any further, we can check that off and stop talking about it and direct our attentions elsewhere.
Good for you, though.
So there's probably more to explore, but that's what we have been exploring so far, and I wanted to share it with you. And I have more to my report, but I'm happy to pause there and hear your thoughts.
Thank you. That piece of what I thought was just a bunch of data, I'm glad I sent it to you.
Yeah.
And we could get ready to say, we're not in this because we're not there. Thank you for all the time and effort.
Sure.
Because that's what it's gonna amount to if it comes forward for our unique settings.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, and the other thing that we realize, our superintendents they are so busy. When you talk about housing, they're like, oh, I can't do that too. Now, we already have 2 districts that already do housing. They have a couple homes that they own. But we might be able to find something that we could pass off to a district and say, hey, we just found something. So feels like we can do some of the legwork.
And when you reference tiny homes, is that you mentioned transitional, is that creating a home for former homeless on school property?
No. It would be, what they're contemplating is if they should build the tiny homes someplace, there's, that still has to be discovered. And then make hookups for those tiny homes on their land for their employees.
So there would be adequate housing for multiple people in it's not the tiny home which is for 1 person or 2 persons.
They probably are. They're probably not moving in with children. But what Fort Bragg has seen is people accepting positions and then declining them later because they realize that they haven't found a place to live.
To Don's point, forever.
But some of these homes could potentially, have a small family of 4. I don't know. I've lived in a trailer for a number of months. It was fairly miserable, but you do what you gotta do. And when I moved here, I also lived in transitional housing that Potter Valley had, and it wasn't a tiny home, but it was pretty darn small. So, but that it's not. The intent is not necessarily long-term, although that will be up to Fort Bragg how they work that out. But I think there's a pretty wide recognition that when it comes to employee housing for schools, there are 2 issues. One is people want to be able to buy a home and live in a place where their family has room to play in a yard, and that's one thing. Our most urgent need is, where we keep seeing in most recent years people leaving our county, is because of that transitional. Like they take the job and they don't have a place to land. And when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those of you that remember studying that in college, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first need is like shelter.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you're not ready to step into a classroom or even step into a school bus, because what we're looking at is not necessarily specific to teachers, it's school employees. So the long-term kind of like, we want them to be able to buy a home. We did talk to Darcy Antle a little bit about the mid-income housing that is being developed. Nothing that would be necessarily a partnership with us, but the county definitely recognizes. They definitely recognize that there's a need for this mid-income housing in our area. So anyway, there's a lot here. I'm learning a lot. Heather is learning a lot. It's but I feel like either we're going to find a partnership or we're going to find that we've exhausted all options and we can stop talking about it.
Your interest might terminate some effort on the part of those individuals as well, broaden their scope.
I've actually been thinking about this and reading on it a little bit. One place you might look is that in Fort Bragg, they did some really nice small houses. A whole area there developed for elderly people. And the houses were just really beautiful little places with solar panels on the roof. And I looked it up one time and it was a company out of Oregon, if I remember correctly, it was Danco was their name.
Oh,
And I even sent them an email at one time asking them if they were interested in doing anything for teachers, and I never did get a reply. But I kind of like that model, and then I'm sort of bothered, I did some research, and it seems like everything that school districts have done for teachers have been rentals. And I don't like that model. You know, I had an uncle who told me he was a carpenter, and it was the story of my family. He said, buy land on, they can't print any more of it. And I've gained an enormous amount of wealth in my life, not from my teaching salary, but through the property I own. And so the whole idea of, you know, the only way a teacher is really gonna buy into your community is if they can own a home there. And very often, starting out you don't start out in your dream house, you start out in a smaller house, and it gains wealth, and then you step up. And so I really, you know, the other thing I've studied up on a little bit is what they call the co-housing model. And I sort of look at a situation where the school district owns the land, they would continue to own the land. That cuts the cost of building a house enormously. And then in the co-housing model, you build one laundry room that, you know, 8 or 10 houses use. You have a playground for the kids, you have a little rec center, sometimes they share food, they share a garden area. And all of that it's a very attractive way to live. We're basically all social animals, and yet it cuts the cost enormously. And so again, I'm just hoping that and again, the district doesn't have to come up with all the money to build it. You know, a young teacher can go get a loan for if it's an affordable house. So I'm hoping that the whole idea of teachers owning those homes is something you keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
So that the individual owns the structure, but then the school still owns the property?
And this is common, right down the road from me is a senior living center called The Woods.
I think
The land is owned by the Presbyterian Church, people own their houses.
I'll explore that. It's been my understanding that there's a fundamental challenge there in having a gift of public funds. Unless it's, so, but I'll look into that and see because if there's more to explore there, we should.
Charge them rent, just keep it minimal.
I see well, that is one of the challenges that some of the developments are having is that the offering subsidizing the housing in any way is considered a gift of public funds, or at least that's been my understanding.
a gift of what?
A gift of public funds,
Oh.
or offering something below market, I think is viewed differently. I'm not sure why, because it seems the same to me, but I'll look into that.
And then various communities have housing authorities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're basically, I think, nonprofits. And you may be able to structure it through a housing authority.
So you mentioned Danco.
Yeah.
And so the man that started that, as I understand, came from Humboldt County.
Yeah.
And we've seen his place, or his name on two places, I think in Ukiah and Santa
Yeah.
Rosa. Not positive, but,
And-
okay, go
And
ahead.
again, they're established builders and
Yeah,
doing
and
big
the-
projects at the low income level. That's not what's happening in Mendocino County. New houses are multi-million-dollar houses on the ocean.
Yeah.
That's going on.
Larry, I think you wanted to say
I
something.
was just gonna remark about Danco. There is a place in Eureka called Carl Johnson's. Carl
Yeah.
Johnson's, it's a livestock auction western store.
Yeah.
And Don and Carolyn Johnson had two sons. One is Danny, and the other one was, what's not important. He runs.
Dave,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, he runs, the one runs the Carl Johnson company, and Danny has developed his own company called Danco. It's Dan Johnson. He played Little League Baseball for me. He was a pistol. Anyway, Dan got through high school almost against his will and went on to do his thing. But I knew the Johnsons very well, and
They're a great family.
Yeah. they were, just wanted to comment, but that's a eureka nest.
You know, this person who's working for CSBA, who's their housing person, it just seems like it might be interesting to invite him up here and sit down and meet and talk with him with the superintendent.
I will look into that. And I think we met with them, it was a virtual meeting, but yeah, I'll look into that.
Because Mendocino County is also very unique. It's
Right.
not like where you have a lot of people and a lot of builders and
Right.
a lot of people who live in apartment buildings and.
Well, and one thing that I have learned through this process so far is that builders that are doing this are not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. There's tax credits involved.
Yeah.
And in
Oh.
order to qualify for the tax credits, the land has to meet certain criteria. And so when, for example, this land does not meet that criteria, no part of it. And that's gonna be true for many of our school districts as well, because they're not within a certain amount of distance of a pharmacy, a medical center, and a grocery store, so it was something like that, again, that just means they can stop thinking about that avenue, and perhaps we can look at something else, but that is something that I learned, I knew that they weren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but now I understand how those tax credits work. So, in meeting with, the Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation, that is, much of the work that they do meet those tax credits. And so that is, in fact, it may be all the work that they do. But that's where we were looking at, perhaps there's a partnership where if they build a complex, we partner and looking at, could we get first right of refusal to a certain number of units for the first 10 years, or, what might that look like? So, anyway,
That would be a good possibility, maybe.
I thought so.
I think
That's so exciting.
it would be good to do a really accurate land survey for Mendocino County. I know Mendocino Unified, they've got 5 acres up there behind the grammar school that no one is ever gonna do anything with. The only way to do a septic system there is to connect into the schools. And then Fort Bragg has extra property, see, but it'd be written, what's available, do they have any plans for it?
Well, that's what they're looking at, putting some transitional housing on some of it. Because the thing with the transitional housing, the tiny homes, is that you don't run the risk of changing your mind and deciding, oh, we need another school there, or we need to put a gym there. You just move those tiny homes and it's still your land.
Yeah.
And I think that is the hesitance that schools have, and which I completely understand. Some of the suggestions through the state meetings are looking at practice fields and saying, well, if you build a complex on this practice field, well, if you do that, you're limiting your school's ability to have practice fields, and you're impacting programs. The minute you impact a program and it decreases, don't ever expect it to build back up unless you have a place for it to grow into. And so if you're taking buildings and putting hard construction on a property, it's off the table now. And I think that's an understandable hesitancy that I think different agencies have. But they are also finding, and perhaps us, like these little pockets, perhaps in Mendocino or in Point Arena, that, is that ours? And if so, why? So,
Well, you
anyway.
think the individual schools would have a lot of incentive because there's such a teacher shortage. I mean, this would really, really help.
The other thing is, if you go out State Street, there's an old elementary school that was abandoned there.
Out State Street.
And
Just
what was
past the
that?
freeway.
Which
Past Mill
should,
Hill.
how about in Redwood Valley, that one we've talked about?
Oh, they sold that, didn't they finally?
I don't know
Oh,
if they finally
did,
sold that
they
or
did
not.
sell it?
It was for sale for a long time. People wanted to do so much with
Right.
it for so long.
I'm
My
not sure
kids
if
went
it's sold
there.
yet.
Carolyn Barrett was.
I
the
think that's what
principal.
you're talking
It
about,
was
is the Redwood Valley, is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Well, that's on the
Must
right.
be. It
Redwood
must
Valley, it's
be.
the only school out there that's
That's
not
It's
not
not
taking
that far out, it's just, you go,
By
it's
Mendocino.
right behind, you know where the junkyard is there, it's right behind it.
I'm not sure where,
In
your
Redwood
junkyard in
Valley?
Redwood Valley?
No, we're talking about Ukiah
By
here.
Mendocino.
Oh,
You go north on State Street, you go under the freeway, there's a freeway
Oh,
entrance
okay.
over there,
There's
and
a school there?
you've got the tiny home place on the right, and you keep going a little further, and there's an abandoned school.
Well, I'm taking a field trip later today, I will go find that, I'm curious about
There's
what it
abandoned
is.
buildings, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not sure about.
All right, Nicole, do you have anything
Yes, I
else?
do, I have a couple of other things that will take not nearly as much time. Whale Gulch is reopened, I sent the email, but I just wanted to let you know, and I attended the board meeting that, every other month they, go between Leggett and Whale Gulch to hold their board meetings, and last week they had their board meeting in Whale Gulch, so I attended to help celebrate and recognize this significant feat of reopening Whale Gulch School. So that is very exciting. That took a ton of work on their part, and they finally found somebody who would insure their buildings, and they're off. The California Conservation Corps, our neighbors here, they're leasing that property, that we expect them to be leaving that property, in February. And so several of us went and took a tour of the property to look and see what's over there, and start thinking about how that might be used. And so there are several buildings that are in pretty rough shape. There's also a classroom, a commercial kitchen, and about, I can't remember how many dormitories, but it sleeps, I think, up to 80 people. Dormitories that sleep 3 to 6 people. So there's a lot over there, and we are considering what can be done with that. We're trying to figure out how much they spend on their utilities, either annually or each month, so that we can estimate what the cost of running the facility is. So we have no firm plans. One idea that I'm excited about that I wanted to share with you that we're exploring is, there's a program, I just forgot the name of it, it's a for ages 16 through 22, I think, it's a youth build. It's a construction program for students who have dropped out of high school or who don't have a high school diploma at ages 16 to 22. It can also be other career and technical focus, depending on what your labor market data indicates is a need. And so we have lots of ideas, with there being a commercial kitchen there for culinary arts. Like, the ideas are endless, the number of ideas that are out there. It's an awful lot of land and buildings, but we've got a lot of ideas. And Eric Crawford, our director of career and college, was on the tour with us. So we're gonna do a visit next month, I think, to some youth build programs in the Bay Area that have been in existence for over a decade, I think. Those are potentially residential programs where the youth live there, something like the CCC at this time. So we've got the talent with Eric Crawford, we potentially have the facility, and we have the market labor need and the data to indicate that it is a need. So when those things all come in line together, it seems like it's
why not?
worth looking at. And so if we were to apply for a grant, the application for the grant would be next September for the year after that, which is seems like the right amount of time to get everything ready, because again, they're still there, they're not even out till February. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. There are a lot of ideas. I hate to share ideas until I know they're happening, but I wanted you to know that this and other things are being considered for that facility. Also wanted to let you know that another consideration, I've shared this before, that the school that we closed here across the parking lot, we have a need for a non-public school in our county. There is no non-public school in Lake or Mendocino counties. Our students take transportation to Sonoma County for non-public school, and there's a waiting list. So we have students who have that as a placement on their IEP, but are not placed in in a non-public school because there is no space for them. And those, when they get the space, sometimes have a very long commute. We are exploring to see if we can have a non-public school open up here. And we've touched base with some special ed directors to see if do we think we would have a full program, and we think it would be pretty close to full to start with, based on the number of students that are currently either being sent out of county or are on a waiting list to be sent out of county. So, yeah.
So a non-public school would be for kids who have been, say, expelled?
No, a non-public school is a special ed school for when the needs are beyond what the school district can offer. So we currently have Ore Creek. That is a public school. It's a county-run public school. And this is a step beyond that. And then the step beyond that is usually residential placement. And right now, we do have students from our county that are in residential placement. Those are all out of state. We'd rather keep them in state, and the part of why we believe this is such a big need is because if the student needs a non-public school setting and they don't get it, and they're stuck for lack of placement in their current setting and they blow out, there's usually place in that residential. That's highly, highly restrictive environment for a student away from their family. It's not the best thing for kids. We need to make sure that we have a place for them. So we are exploring that now to see if there's a non-public school that might want to open up a facility here, and we have the facility.
And is there
State
some
or
of the,
county?
oh, I'm sorry, I was your head.
No,
Go ahead, Charlene.
Okay, so at Ore Creek, some of their equipment is portable and can be, like, you could bring it to this other school ever what, I don't know how.
So if the other school were to open, it would be run, this board would not have authority over that. We would be opening up the property to them. It would-
Oh, okay,
So that's how a non-public school is. If we were, then it would by definition not be a non-public school.
Got it.
So
okay.
I initially thought, well, we should open it up, and somebody pointed out to me, you'd be opening a public school. While we might have items that we would make available to them, that would all be part of a potential agreement. And again, I don't want to get too far down the road, but I also don't want to surprise you. I want to let you know this is something that we're exploring now. Our director of special ed is exploring this. Larry, you had a question too.
I was just gonna say thank you. My God, the ideas that have come out, I know about the CCC thing. I mean, we've all heard of it and know about them and their program. But how that building is put together, your tour must have opened a lot of eyes.
Yeah, because it used to be a dairy, and many of the buildings still very much look like a dairy. But they have, the needs of the CCE are very different than ours. So for example, they need a lot of equipment storage for when they go and fight fires. And they have, rooms just full of equipment, well organized. They also there's like a studio apartment up above a space. They have the dorms that they have electrical but no water, so they have like shower and laundry separate, and then a big deck that connects them all together. So yes, it was fascinating.
But your grasp of the possibilities and that your staff is helping you do, that's a quantum leap, and I'm pleased. Thank you.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, and I have to say that it is so good to work with people who are really good at their job. Because Eric Crawford, I don't think any of us would have had that, what's it called again? Youth Build, on our radar. But Eric's just absolutely giddy with excitement about the possibility of what that can do. And one of the things, sorry, I only have a few more things, but on this I want to pause just a moment.
This is good.
Because we are at a crossroads with that facility. And we have people in our community that would like to use that facility. And so we will probably have some decisions to make, and I believe those decisions would be by this board.
Yes.
I don't think that those are things that I have the authority to do on my own. But as we're exploring things, we want to keep in mind that our primary focus is K-12 education. TK through, early education through 12, that's okay. But we are not a college, but we have a good partnership with the college. We are not a private school. We've got other private schools. So there are other agencies that may want to use that, and maybe that's gonna be an appropriate partnership. But our primary focus is really clear to us. And so we are trying to explore what we might be able to do that would not be in conflict with any other program that's already going on. We're not big enough to have a bunch of the same thing just across town, you know. So we're really trying to find the need, meet the need, but it's super exciting to have the talent to be able to explore these things. So it's exciting.
And Eric's probably already been, but there's a new CCC campus right across from the hospital in Willits. And I was so impressed with how quickly, I mean, you read about it on a sign one day and like the next 2 weeks later, you go there and it's,
Yeah, they're excited.
yeah.
They're currently in the oldest CCC facility in the state, and then they will shortly be in the newest. So they're excited to make that transition.
That's great.
The other things on my, we have a superintendent conference coming up the end of this week. We're very excited about that. We'll be hearing from our harbor master in Fort Bragg discussing locally sourced food. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be just seafood. School and college legal services, General Counsel Danielle Hope will give legal updates to the superintendents. Joel Rabin, who is kind of a big get for us, he's coming discussing California's statewide system of support. Our superintendents are excited about that. And then Yuri Calderon, who's the executive director of the Small School District Association, is coming to present as well. And those names may not have the impact on you like they have on me, but I'm excited. I'm gonna get their autographs and all the things, take selfies with them. These are some big names for us to get, and it's kind of a big deal that they'll come and talk to 12 superintendents in Mendocino County, but they all agreed to, so we're excited about that. And I'll close with, it is Administrator Appreciation Week. I am so thankful for the administration that I get to work with. I thank you for the time that you're taking to fill out cards to send to superintendents in our county. They do really hard work, so it's nice to send them a little note of appreciation.
And thanks for making it so easy
Sure.
for us.
Sure, that was the longest report I've ever given. I will strive to never give a report that long.
No, it's
Yes.
exciting.
Wow, I know, my head's full.
Alright, we'll move to 6.6 board member reports, see if we can compete with Nicole there. Start off with,
You always started my end of the
Let's
table.
Let's not.
All right, a couple of things that you probably know about. There are a pair of webinars, very different, but ones I hope that you either have registered for or would. On October 30th, CSBA staff is presenting a webinar on artificial intelligence in the schools, promise, peril, policy, and performance. That's October 30th, 10 in the morning. It has come to you in the regular communication, and if you're not sure, I can ship it to you. This is, Josh Daniels is gonna be there. He's the Chief of Policy and Governance Technology Services for CSBA. The Chief Information Officer for the LA Unified School Districts is there, and so forth. The other thing is that an employee in the IT department at Willits School, by virtue of the fact that somebody said, well, I don't want to do that, has been serving on the artificial intelligence policy development program for months. We've had a couple of conversations, and it wasn't to bother him with it, but we brought up earlier that artificial intelligence needs a different set of policies, or an additional set of policies relative to what it's going to mean to schools. And it's everything promised to peril, but it's there at, I can give you the link. I'm sure it's not too late to register. The other one was, there's an organization introducing ACCBE, that's the Association of County Boards of Education. Brand new group, if you will, after all of the things that have gone on between CSBA and the county boards and all the feelings and the angst, and I think to a degree justifiably, and CSBA is, I'll just use it here, is trying to make like it was all planned when it wasn't. And here we are. So that is a webinar and a chance to learn about it. It's October 28th at 6 p.m. in the evening. And it also is, there's a QR code on the announcement that I brought, and I could probably get copies to each of you of how to register if you wish. But those are two things, one on the new organization for us as county boards and the other one on artificial intelligence. The other one, the other couple of things that I wanted to connect, and it's distressing, but nevertheless, I think it's worth bringing up. We have the state assessment results in October, and they aren't too good. They show very little improvement or decline, and that's the way Vernon Billy, our CEO for CSBA, is trying to, I'm sorry, put lipstick on a pig. These aren't good. These aren't good. Our kids are not coming forward on a state level like they ought to, or like we wish they did. And we all have our theories, and each of you probably has as to why, and we can look around corners and for blame. I'm even concerning myself with the training that the teachers have had coming into the teaching of mathematics and reading and language, because we have, by and large, a teaching corps. I don't think this county is any worse or any better, but there are an awful lot of people trying to keep classrooms going and working very hard who haven't really had a chance to learn and to be trained and to even know the subject matter well. But nevertheless, those results are there. On the heels of that comes the national call. This was in your California School News. National call to reduce chronic absenteeism. So many kids aren't in school as much as they should be, and it's everything from kids you can't find and the parents who tell you, we're sending our kid to school. That's a very small fringe of it. We also have families that say to themselves, we're really great, we're doing the best for our kids we can, but then they let the school know that on Thursday night or on Wednesday night, they're gonna be going to see grandma somewhere else, and they're gonna miss a couple of days of school, et cetera, et cetera. There are casual activities surrounding school attendance. And we have, you can read this, it's in a document that you've received, but essentially it's across the entire country. And there are pilots that have done well. Essentially, the ones that they chose for this article were on the East Coast. But it's something that I have brought up, and I hope, while everybody has way more to do, while I hope that we could begin to work as a board, perhaps with other school boards, or as a county office, perhaps with districts, on some concrete, positive, realistic ways of making coming to school important, and then get the buy-in, because it ought not to be punitive all the time. And also get some buy-in from the law enforcement officers and the district attorney in terms of dealing clearly with positions. I see kids on the street all day. We all do. Whether they're homeschooled, whatever that term means, et cetera, that's not the way it should be. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I hope that perhaps the board, if you would like to agendize the question or whatever, might want to begin to think about, can we do anything about that? I know we had reports from Nicole about what attendance is and so forth, or what we face. But this is something that I hope we would be in a position to do more than talk about it. So that's my report, Hush. Yes,
Thank you.
One comment. You know, Mendocino Unified at one point, I don't know if they still have it or not, they hired a social worker.
Yeah.
who would actually go into the home and work with the family in a very positive way. You wanna make your kid go to school and be successful there, and I don't know how well it works with it. But it's something that could be done.
Yeah, most schools have something, it might not be a social worker, sometimes a family community liaison or something like that.
Next up.
Moving on to me, I will not try to compete with you. I will thank you. My mind is swimming with all the new ideas.
I know it, I know,
I'm so
I know it.
excited about what we're doing here at MCOE. And that's all I'm gonna say is thank you.
I'll also echo that. Big thanks to all the administrators here on Administrative Week. And yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I had something come up and I missed that movie,
Oh,
and I wondered if people saw it and what their impression.
Make a Circle.
Yeah,
It's a great movie. At some point it should come out on PBS, I believe. I'm not sure when. It was a movie, we had a showing in Ukiah and a showing in Fort Bragg. I went to the one in Fort Bragg on Friday night. And the Make a Circle is a documentary regarding childcare providers, the struggle to get a living wage, the struggles, it shows the struggles through COVID. It's a very compelling movie. You missed it, but I'm sure it'll come out and you can watch it. And one thing that our staff did a really good job of creating a VIP experience for childcare providers. Public, private, doesn't matter. They were all invited to come and they got we had red carpet, there was a photographer, they had special treats and popcorn, and it was a lovely event, and I hope a lot of
Was
people
it
see that
here?
movie. The one in Ukiah was at the conference center, and the one in Willits was at town hall. Not Willits, sorry,
I
Fort
don't
Bragg.
know how cause you mentioned it before.
But you can keep an eye out for it on public television, I'm not sure when.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm just enthralled with all the ideas you brought. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shirley. With that, we will move to closing items. Next board meeting will be Monday, November 18th at 10 a.m. In here. And then moves us to adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
So moved. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
thank you.
Thank
you.
you.